We are in First Samuel lesson 8b, finishing it off. And so last time we did chapter 27 and 28. Did we get to 29 or did I just leave it at 28? I can't remember. Um,
I don't think so. Um, I was gonna look.
yeah, so we'll do 29 today, but 27 we see where David said to himself, now I will perish one day by the hand of Saul, and there's nothing better for me than to safely escape into the land of the Philistines. So we see him, he goes to Achish in Gath. Gath is the hometown of Goliath, and we see that Achish gives him Ziklag, and also that David starts going and raiding Israel's enemies in the territory, and then lying to Achish and saying that he was actually raiding his own people. So yeah, we had some things going on here with David. And we see Achish believing David. And so then the next chapter in 28, we had Saul. We see the Philistines decide that, hey, this is a good time to go up against Israel. We have David outside of Israel in the land of the Philistines. He's friends with Achish now. Achish has given him territory, and we see that Achish, in his mind, planned to make David his servant. And so now we have the Philistines going up against Israel, and Samuel's dead. And Saul, we see Saul had removed the mediums and the spiritists from the land. But whenever it comes time for, he inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him either in dreams or by the Urim or by the prophets. And so that we see that there's other prophets in the land, and we'll see that whenever we go over our at a glance chart as well. But Saul goes to the woman at Endor, the medium at Endor, even though he had gotten rid of the mediums and the spiritists in the land. He goes and he consults her and asks her to bring up the spirit of Samuel. And so we discussed all that last week, and Samuel just spoke the same words as before, but also said, tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. Indeed, the Lord will hand the army of Israel over to the Philistines. And so that kind of leads us into the next two chapters. And Saul was horrified. And then we saw that the medium of Endor, um, prepared a meal for him and things like that. And then he was on his way. So going into 29, now we have this precarious situation. So 1 through 5, now the Philistines gathered together all their armies to Aphek, while the Israelites were camping by the spring which is in Jezreel. And the governors of the Philistines were proceeding on, leading hundreds and thousands, and David and his men were proceeding in the back with Achish. Then the commanders of the Philistines said, what are these Hebrews doing here? And Achish said to the commanders of the Philistines, is this not David, the servant of Saul, the king of Israel, who has been with me these days, or rather these years, and I have found nothing at all suspicious in him since the day he deserted to me to this day? But the commanders of the Philistines were angry with him, and the commanders of the Philistines said to him, make the man go back so that he will return to his place where you have assigned him, and do not let him go down to battle with us, or in the battle he may become an adversary to us. For how could this man find favor with his Lord? Would it not be with the heads of these men Is this not the David of whom they sing in the dances, saying, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s? All right, so insights into 1 through 5.
Well, a question I really couldn't answer, but it was at the beginning, it's almost sounds like that happened before chapter 28. If you look at the locations on where the two armies are, it's almost like they're still getting to that place rather than already arrived. So I couldn't really put that together.
Mm,
Because they were near Gilboa, not in Gilboa, and I don't know, it just seemed left me wondering where they were. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely. So you have 27 where they're well, no, 28. It's 28. Yes. So they were gathering to fight against Israel. And so yes, you have like Saul goes off to the medium, but then we have David also went um there as well, and we have this or he went to the battle lines on the side of the Philistines. He's kind of in a predicament here. And we see some deliverance. But yeah, I mean it's kind of all, yeah, it goes um while Saul's off consulting a medium, you know, this is the battle lines drawing up. So I didn't look at the geography um just because I was kind of like, well, it kind of makes my head hurt. But um and sometimes geography is really helpful to timeline and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't do it with this one. So but it seems like it's kind of like just kind of carrying on, and this is what's happening. Yeah. um what about all this, like, here's David, here's Akish, he's fine with David being with them and these commanders. Thoughts on that?
Well, you can kind of see why they wouldn't want him there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, it was pretty bold to speak up to Akish, really, because knowing that Akish was so trusting of
Mm-hmm.
David. Um, but I'm sure they'd get attacked from both sides if David did fight. So I mean, they'd get David behind him and Israel in front of him, and wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it's definitely yeah, the commanders certainly have a point. Akish is snowed by David. And David's in a hard place because it's like if he fights with the Philistines, he has to fight against Israel. And yeah, it's just this is just kind of a not good situation. So I put, is this not David the servant of Saul for the paragraph theme? And just kind of, because David has been, David, your servant, the servant of Saul. And we saw the rhetoric against David whenever with Nabal, um, about how servants are, running away from their masters or whatever. And then we also just that thread, that theme of Akish wanting to make David his servant. And so Akish is totally trusting David, um, seeing, no evil in him, but David's been lying to him this whole time. But these other commanders, they're not buying it. So going into 6 through 11, then Achish called to David and said to him, as the Lord lives, you have indeed been honest, and you're going out and you're coming in with me, and the army are pleasing in my sight, for I have not found evil in you since the day of your coming to me this day. Nevertheless, you are not pleasing in the sight of the governors. Now then, return and go in peace, so that you will not do anything wrong in the sight of the governors of the Philistines. However, David said to Achish, but what have I done? And what have you found in your servant since the day that I have come before you to this day, that I cannot go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king? But Achish replied to David, I know that you are pleasing in my sight, like an angel of God. Nevertheless, the commanders of the Philistines have said he must not go up with us into the battle. Now then, rise early in the morning with the servants of your Lord who have come with you. And as soon as you have risen early in the morning and have light, leave. So David got up early, he and his men, to leave in the morning to return to the land of the Philistines. And the Philistines went up to Jezreel. All right, insights into this.
Yeah, again, here it says they went up to Jezreel, like they weren't already there yet, you know?
Yeah, like they're marching to, yeah.
Yeah, like they were on the route, but they weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered, I mean, I don't know distance wise, I mean, how long did it take him to get back to Ziklag and,
Yeah.
you know, something that takes more time, I think, to go through than I devoted,
Yeah.
to, obviously. But,
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, it's enough time for the Amalekites to come in and raid and burn everything down and take everybody captive and get to partying over the spoil. So yeah, there's definitely some time passed here from the Philistines going out and David going with them, and then to David also returning. Um, so yeah. What about this exchange here with Achish and David?
well, you wonder why David asked, "Oh, but what have I done? Is he fishing?"
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, or yeah, or is it David really? I don't know. I mean, David knows
Mhm.
he's killing,
Yeah.
um, you know. So yeah,
Yeah, it's yeah, you don't know if it's really hard to tell, is this kind of like haggling, um or is this yeah, um yeah, it's kind of a hard one here, like where is David sitting? But I mean, David's in a really precarious situation because he gave a very vague answer earlier. You'll see what your servant can do. He didn't say I'm with you. He just said you will see what your servant will can do. Um so yeah, it's just very kind of like the thing is that, Akish really trusts David. He's like, but you are pleasing, you I have this for my paragraph theme. I have not found evil in you. However, you are not pleasing in the sight of the governors. Um, like I said before, I mean, David has a Kish snowed. I mean, just totally like he totally trusts David. And so I don't know what that says about a Kish. The governors have a different perspective, and rightly so. Um, I think that this could speak to a lot of things, just discernment. Um, Number one, I think that we do tend to um sometimes not think everything through um on some things, or give benefit of the doubt. Maybe, Akish wanted something for himself so bad that he was kind of not thinking everything through. Um, I think as far as David goes, it's this predicament is kind of a result of him just not trusting that promise that, he's the next anointed king and saying Saul's going to kill me. And he goes and runs to the enemy, the Philistines. And then he starts raiding and plundering. And now here he is in this predicament at the battle lines. But we see how he's delivered from that predicament, and just told to go home. And so that's what he does. It goes home. So I have from a paragraph name, I have not found evil in you. However, you are not pleasing in the sight of the governors. Um, Chapter theme overall is David must not go up with the Philistines in battle. Because that's really the crux of it. He really should not be going up with the Philistines in battle. So any other insight or commentary on chapter 29?
And I read over that piece where it says, my Lord the King. And in 8. And I guess I don't have a problem with him calling Achish Lord.
Mm-hmm.
It just, I mean, it's like, okay, I mean, as kids in school, we were taught that you address the president, as Mr. President, even if you don't like him or you didn't vote for him or your parents don't. Like, it's like it's the office that you're respecting. And I mean, Akish was a successful king. I mean, he might have been a little blind when it came to David, but at the same time, I think David was one to give people respect. It was deemed, and that is something he would have had to communicate to Akish. So again, is he being truthful, or I don't think he's like substituting him for God,
No.
And if he had just said, my Lord, I would have been a little more concerned, but my Lord, the King, it's like, he's got the perspective right. It's because he's king.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
we meet Putin, we'd still be respectful. We might not like, you know what I mean? We don't like his politics, but you're still respectful, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, this is in no way any type of reference to Akish being a deity. This is just mainly like he's an authority. Um so just whenever like when Sarah called Abraham my lord, just deferring, to the authority of his headship of the family. So and let's not get all feminist on that one, but because she definitely gave him what for at times. But it yeah, David is definitely not. There's no concern there. But I mean, you bring up a really good point about David too, and that's another part of that character is it doesn't matter who's in office. Like you said, I mean, we were taught we call him Mr. President or whatever. It's respect for the office, and it really doesn't matter who's in office. You still have respect, and it's like you said, even if Putin came over to visit or whatever, you would still have respect for him as the leader of Russia. You might not agree with him. He might be the enemy. um you know there's a book called If I Perish by Esther On Kim, and it is about this lady. Her name was Esther On Kim, and she was in South Korea during World War II, and it was whenever Japan was going in and persecuting the Christians. They were basically saying, like, they're putting up Shinto shrines, and they were saying you have to worship in the Shinto shrine, or else you go to jail. Well, she went to jail And she actually ended up, for whatever reason I can't remember, they would like bring her into the office to talk with her. And she was always respectful, always addressed them by their titles, just very respectful. And I mean, she ended up having to tell one of the leaders something pretty harsh. She said, you know, if you guys don't stop this, God is going to rain down hellfire and brimstone. And sure enough, America bombed Hiroshima. Um, but then that just leads into Daniel. He was taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar, and he was respectful to everyone around him. You know, called them by their titles, deferred to them, deferred to their authority. Whenever he spoke to Belshazzar, he was a little stronger in speech, but he was still respectful as far as his title and his office. He just told the truth. So, I mean, that's another thing on our, you know, a man after God's own heart. Um, just looking at the character study of David and you know, I mean, I'm getting a contrast with Saul. I mean, look at what he said to his own son. Whenever he was having that feast or whatever, and David wasn't there, and he asked Jonathan about him, and like he couldn't be respectful to his own son. I mean, it was, yeah. So there's like comparisons and contrasts here, and we see David kind of having some issues here as far as trust and you know, he's lying to Akish and he gets in this predicament. um but now we're gonna see what happens next. Whereas Saul, it's like he never really, like, he doesn't hear from the Lord. He inquires of him, but he doesn't hear from him because the Lord is has judged his heart. And when he doesn't hear from the Lord, he doesn't keep knocking. He just goes to the medium in Endor. So we see like this difference here. And so going into 30, um, now we have our turn with David. So then it happened when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day that the Amalekites had carried out an attack on the Negev and on Ziklag, and had overthrown Ziklag and burned it with fire. And they took captive the women and all who were in it, from the small to the great, without killing anyone, and drove them off and went their way. When David and his men came to the city, behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, their daughters had been taken captive. Then David said, the people who were with him raised their voices, or David and the people who were with him raised their voices and wept until there was no strength in them to weep. Now David's two wives had been taken captive, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess and Abigail the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. Also David was in great distress because the people spoke of stoning him. For all the people were embittered, each one because of his sons and his daughters, but David felt strengthened in the Lord his God. All right, insights here.
Okay, I looked up strength, where it says David strengthened himself. Some versions said encourage, but strengthen was kind of the big one. And here it said it was used figuratively to take courage. And the Hebrew tense, it's in the subjective. So it's, you know, David's acting on himself. But it's also used to express intensive action. And then Wilson's Old Testament added it was to hold fast, the idea of strength, because things are made firmer and stronger by girding and binding together. And implying that, you know, it was God that he was binding himself with at this point.
Mhm.
So we're on the way up anyway.
Yes, it's like we had to go down to the pit. So it's kind of like, what is your what's your bottom? And it happens with everyone. It can happen with believers, and we've talked about this. We can have carnal Christians, but what's their bottom? And you always hope that they don't take everybody down with them. With like with alcoholics or whatnot. But in any situation where somebody is just not walking in the spirit, so to speak, but walking in the flesh, which we see David has been doing, he's been walking in the flesh. And now we have the situation where, okay, now your wives and your children are gone, everybody's wives and everybody's children's gone, your town is burned, and everybody wants to stone you because they blame you. And so he's hit bottom, and now, yes, we have this reversal. Like, he's because whenever you get so far down in the pit, the only way you have to look is up, and that's where David is right now. um so yes, but David felt strengthened in the Lord as God. It's because he looked up. He finally looked up and said, out. And then we'll see what happens next. But any other insight into this? Why would they want to kill him?
Well, they'd lost everything,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I mean, probably their family. I mean, they're used to going and fighting people and getting spoil and resupplied and all that kind of thing, but it took away their families, you know. And I think we touched on it last time. It's not like everybody was out to lunch. He could have had some of his soldiers who were still praying, or you know what I mean? Whatever. So they would have known that he was. I mean, some of these guys would have seen David in his better times. They would have known there was a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
they would have known that David could have done better by them, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, this is all David led everybody over into enemy territory. He, did the raids. He lied to Achish. He got them in this thing where they might have to battle the Israelites. They were delivered from that. And then, we have the enemy wiping out their village. But the thing is, it's also God's hand in this. God doesn't want David in this is kind of a picture of the world. David ran to the world. God wants David back in Israel. Back, like, let's get back to where we're supposed to be. And so we see that here. It's like the town's burned, all the people are gone, and David is so down, he looks up, and then we're going to see that the old David is back. So yeah, these people are just like, okay, whenever all the priests were killed, because David lied to the priest and he took responsibility for it immediately, that was a good leader. Even though he made a mistake, he immediately took responsibility for it whenever he realized what had happened. And so then, um, here we've kind of seen where he's not walking in the spirit and he's walking in the flesh, and we have some consequences here, and the people are angry. I mean, there's also the theme is, just as people, we always want to blame somebody. you know like, we always gotta find somebody to blame.
It comes so naturally, doesn't it? I mean, even you see it in very young children. I mean, it just like grows with us.
Yeah. So it's kind of a natural consequence as well to, David's actions, so to speak, this past year and 4 months. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's also like people in, general, it's like everybody's trying to find somebody to blame. But so yeah, it's kind of, there's a lot of little lessons here. So it just says Ziklag burned, wives, sons, and daughters taken captive by the Amalekites. And then, in commentary, I saw that, this is why God said, get rid of them all, because, and if you do I highly recommend, since we're about to have a 2-week break, if you have time, I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's Esau and the Palestinians, and it traces from Esau through the Amalekites, all the way to World War II. So that's actually a really good one. It helps you understand a lot of things. So we're seeing the consequence from that as well. So 7 through 10. Then David said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, please bring me the ephod. So Abiathar brought the ephod to David. And David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I pursue this band of raiders? Will I overtake them? And he said to him, pursue, for you will certainly overtake them, and you will certainly rescue everyone. So David left, he and the 600 men who were with him, and they came to the brook Besor, where some who were left behind stayed, but David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 were too exhausted to cross the brook. Besor stayed behind. All right, insights here.
Well, the word all in 8 is in italics, so it doesn't say that he's going to rescue all there.
Mm.
I mean, he does, and I'm sure that's why they stuck it in there. They translated it, but I think we still need to bear in mind that it didn't say it there.
Mm-hmm.
I did the inquired, but that was just ask or inquire. It was kind of your basic word.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, David's back. It's like hit rock bottom, looked up, strengthened in the Lord. And then now it's like, okay, now we're gonna ask God what our next step is gonna be. Which we haven't seen that in a bit. And so we see that God says, yes, you're gonna go and you're gonna rescue. Um, and then, but we also see he has his 600 men, and 200 of them are they're just way too tired. The other thing, that, where was it? And they raised their voices and wept until there was no strength in them to weep. Like, this is like just like, I don't know if you've ever been there where you have wept so hard that and then you're so worn out you can't even weep anymore. Um, so that's where they are. And so not only that, it's they just traveled with the Philistines, came back, came back to this, and now they're going out again, and 200 of the men, they're just wiped. They can't make it. And so I just put David inquired of the Lord, pursue, for you will certainly overtake them. And then 11 through 15, now they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread, and he ate, and they provided him water to drink. They also gave him a slice of fig cake and 2 cakes of raisins, and he ate, and then his spirit revived, for he had not eaten bread nor drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, to whom do you belong, and where are you from? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, a servant of an Amalekite, and my master abandoned me when I became sick 3 days ago. We carried out an attack on the Negev of the Cherethites and on that which belongs to Judah and on the Negev of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. Then David said to him, will you bring me down to this band of raiders? And he said, swear to me by God that you will not kill me or hand me over to my master, and I will bring you down to this band. All right, insights here.
I think you see David's compassion again. I mean, I think it's just natural for him to act that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we see, yeah, I mean, this guy, he didn't know this poor Egyptian. I mean, he just gets sick and they just leave him, like to die. But we see this kind of providence of God, not only for David to get this information about where they are, but also for this Egyptian man that was just left by the wayside. And so I just have David ask the Egyptian to bring him to the band of raiders. And then 16 through 20. Now, when he had brought him down, behold, they were dispersed all over the land, eating and drinking and celebrating because of all the great plunder they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. And David slaughtered them from twilight until evening of the next day, and not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had taken and rescued his 2 wives. And nothing of theirs was missing, whether small or great, sons or daughters, plunder, or anything that they had taken for themselves. David brought it all back. So David had captured all the sheep and the cattle which the people drove ahead of the other livestock, and they said, this is David's plunder. All right, insights here.
I mean,
Well, I
I,
mean,
I,
go
I
ahead.
go back to the 3 days and 3 nights.
Mm-hmm.
He's been there that long, but I did look up the distance, but I just gave like current day roads. It's
Mm-hmm.
109 miles from where their battle was to Ziklag.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like 35 miles a day on foot.
Yep.
It seems like a lot.
Yep.
I mean, if they were at the battle when he sent them back.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
I mean, you can understand why those 200 didn't make it. And then yeah, I mean, this is um and that guy had been out there for 3 days. So yeah, there is a lot of distance, time, um all kinds of things. The interesting thing here is up here they're about to stone him. Um And then down here, this is David's plunder. So we've had this total reversal. Everybody's behind David now. We have our king is back. The king that we know is back, and so this is David's plunder. And so then we're gonna see what David does with quote unquote his plunder. So I just put David recovered all the Amalekites had taken. This is David's plunder. So 21 through 25, when David came to the 200 men who were too exhausted to follow David and had been left behind at the brook Besor, they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. Then David approached the people and greeted them. Then all the wicked and worthless men among those who went with David said, since they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoils that we have recovered, except to every man his wife and his children, so that they may lead them away and leave. But David said, you must not do so, my brothers, with what the Lord has given us, for he has protected us and handed us over to the band of raiders that came against us. And who will listen to you in this matter? For as is the share of the one who goes down into battle, so shall be the share of the one who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike. So it has been from that day forward that he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel to this day. Insight into this one.
I think David had a way of putting things, I mean, on the one hand, it's like, why should we give anything to these worthless guys that just sort of sat here and did nothing and didn't risk their life, going after the Amalekites? But then David makes a point. I mean, they stayed by your baggage, so someone else didn't come and take it, which was pretty common in
Right.
those days. So it's like they're worth something too.
Yeah.
And again, David's compassion on everybody. It's like,
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's here is our leader. He is back. He is like, and yeah, I mean, and they called him in scripture the wicked and worthless men, that are just like, I mean, yeah, these people, I mean, yes, they didn't go with you into battle, but they stayed and made sure that whatever you had on with you or left behind or whatever didn't get raided or taken or whatever. And also, I mean, that it's just have compassion on your fellow man. I mean, if these men couldn't travel, they couldn't travel. You're always going to have uh people who are weaker than others, always. Weaker physically, weaker mentally, weaker spiritually. And the message here is you don't leave them behind, and you take care of them. So I just put the share of the one who goes into battle shall be the same as the one who stays with the baggage. I could have put a new ordinance in Israel. I could have put, tacked that on there. I could have made it really long, or I could have called this a new ordinance in Israel. Any other insight into this? So 26 through 31. Now, when David came to Ziklag, he sent some of the spoils to the elders of Judah, to his friends, saying, behold, a gift for you from the spoils of the enemies of the Lord. To those who were in Bethel, to those who were in Ramoth of Negev, to those who were in Jeter, to those who were in Auror, and those who were in Siphmoth, to those who were in Esh Temoa, to those who were in Rakal, and those who were in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, to those who were in the cities of the Kenites, to those who were in Hormah, to those who were in Borashan, and those who were in Athak, and to those who were in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men walked. All right, insight.
well, it seemed fair because those places were east of Ziklag, so that's where they had been wandering there.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd taken care of David and his men, I'm sure, so it was just giving back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So our leader is back, and leading in godly ways. So here we have mountaintop here with David. Um, so I just had David sends the spoil of the enemy to the elders of Judah. Overall chapter theme: Ziklag burned, but the wives, sons, and daughters are recovered. Um, now on to, I think it's just one of the saddest chapters. Now the Philistines were fighting against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from the Philistines, but fell fatally wounded on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines also overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines killed Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchi-Shua, the sons of Saul. The battle went heavily against Saul, and the archers found him, and he was gravely wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and pierce me through with it, otherwise the uncircumcised Philistines will come and pierce me through and abuse me." But the armor bearer was unwilling because he was very fearful. So Saul took his sword and fell on it. When his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul died with his 3 sons, his armor bearer, and all his men on that day together. All right, insight.
Well, basically Saul commits suicide and his armor bearer follows. I mean, even if it was a lethal wound, which it probably was, but that usually takes spiritual influence there. But he had that with the Witch of Endor, so the people
Yeah.
that kept in company with himself there, I mean, the ones that took him to Endor, they obviously were tapped into that mental set. I mean, he wasn't tapped into his godly advisors. So
Right.
I guess
Yeah, I mean the when he says they will pierce me through and abuse me, you wouldn't want to have been the king to have been captured in war back then. Um, because they would have done some pretty awful things while he was still alive. So I think part of this is him wanting to circumvent that. Definitely suicide is not God's way. And we see that Saul does not make godly choices. Um, I did see some commentary kind of about Saul wanting to die with honor. Um, but instead of dishonor at the hands of the Philistines. And then the kind of the irony of that they, cut off his head and nailed his body to the wall and things like that. But yeah, I mean, this is just they're all dead. Um, Saul's dead, all his sons are dead, just as Samuel said. So this is the just that what Samuel said is just coming to fruition. Um, I am going to say as a side note, kind of put this little part in the back of your mind. I know we're not going to hit Second Samuel until January, um, but just put this in the back of your mind as opposed to whenever David hears about what happened. So we're going to want to refer back to this. So I just have Saul, his sons, and all his men died that day. And then now the people of Israel, no, when the people of Israel who were on the other side of the valley with those who were beyond the Jordan saw that the men of Israel had fled and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned the cities and fled. And then the Philistines came and settled in them. Um, so this is just the fruition of God had said through Samuel, Israel's going to be handed over, and they were. So I just have the minute Israel fled, the Philistines settled in their cities. Um, So then 8 through 13, it came about on the next day when the Philistines came to strip those killed. They found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped off his weapons and sent them throughout the land of the Philistines to bring the good news to the house of their idols and to the people. They put his weapons in the temple of Ashtoreth, and they nailed his body to the wall of Beth Shan. Now, when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men got up and walked all night, and they took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Beth Shan and came to Jabesh and buried them there. And they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh and fasted for 7 days. All right, insight here.
Well, there's obviously still some honorable men in Israel, Israel. I mean, they came and got him.
These were the guys. Saul had actually rescued them earlier in his reign. Um, so it was kind of like they remembered that was like 40 years before he had rescued them, and yeah, and so they honored that and came and got his body and took care of him and his sons properly. But I mean, this is how it ends. This is how First Samuel ends off. Second Samuel is really just it's a continuation. Um, so chapter themes, in this case, the books themselves are just the kind of man-made divisions. But this is how it's divided up, and yeah, I mean, this is how it ends, and it's kind of a depressing end to First Samuel. But heading into Second Samuel, then we'll see the rise of David as king. So it kind of picks up a little there, but I think it's okay to feel sad with this and to kind of be depressed because it's depressing how Saul ends, and that his righteous son Jonathan got took in the mix and things like that. I mean, it's just yeah, I don't know if anybody else has any insight, comments or insight.
Well, I kind of go back to 28 or 27. There's a verse there that I do take a little difference, whether it says that God was Saul's adversary or foe. I don't think God is our adversary. I mean, we might turn away from God, but God does not turn away from us.
Uh-uh.
And I think um, I mean, God still, I mean, if Saul had listened, Saul had repented, um, and then asked God, God probably would have given him a much different answer than go to war. Would say, you're going to get beaten. You're going to, you may get killed. Go turn around, go back, retreat, try again another day. Whatever. I mean, there were other options than just go to battle and get yourself all killed. Um, so that verse about, and I think there is something unique about that construction on that word foe or enemy, but I didn't have time to get into it too much. So, but
Um,
I mean,
when I look at it, I see it more as the Lord has abandoned you and has become your enemy. Um, it's more of kind of that judgment of heart. Like God knows that like Saul is just, God knows the beginning from the end. He knows that Saul is not going to repent. He knows Saul's heart. And um, I don't think that would have been said if he knew Saul was going to repent. Does that make sense? So I look at it more as like Saul's heart has been judged. But yeah, I mean, I obviously I didn't get into the grammar construction of that. I just took it more as, but no, the Lord is for us. He's not against us, but he's for the righteous. Um, so if Saul would have repented, the Lord wouldn't have abandoned him and he wouldn't have been his enemy. But Saul didn't repent for whatever reason. He just could not get it together. I, 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 you know, um, anytime he was confronted with something, it was always he always thought he was doing the right thing. It's like he kind of constructed his own deal.
His own reality. It's like yeah. I mean, he
Yeah.
did it several times, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that especially in this day and age, especially like now that we're at the end times and one of the things is don't be deceived, don't be deceived, don't be deceived. Why? Because there's going to be deception and a lot of people are making up, you know, what Christianity is and things like that. And I think this is a good reminder in First Samuel of if it's not what God says, then it's not of God. And I mean, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. Whenever you study Leviticus, it's how do you approach a holy God? Whereas we see Saul is just always approaching his own way and not God's way. Whereas David, it's different. And we can see that because you can put the Psalms together with David's journey and see his repentance, his crying out, him wanting to do things God's way. Does he slip? Does he fall? Yes. But there's always that he goes back, he seeks the Lord, and then we see that walking in the spirit instead of the flesh, where we just see Saul, he's just walking in the flesh. Um, and just making up his own game. Um, so I think the sadness and the gravity just closing out this book with Saul's death and his son's death, I think it's something to kind of think about as far as the unrepentant, just how final and I mean just sad it is. So anything else before we go over our at a glance chart?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, whew. Saul played with the enemy. As far as listening to the enemy, and he died by the enemy. So just Saul is dead is the chapter theme. Um, so you're at a glance chart. I am not going to go over this whole thing, but I have this for you. And I also put in, like, you can go here and go to that first spreadsheet that has chapters 1 through 23. And I think I put a link in the first spreadsheet that can go to this. So I'll send these links out. And I have segment divisions, I have your chapter themes, and then I have your paragraph themes here. But I'm not going to read all this because that's like really long. But that's just all put together in one place for you. And then I have one with just your chapter themes. So there's a few segment divisions, and you can just kind of keep going and going and going. You can pull out different things of when David's on a high, when David's on a low. I saw some things kind of like round 1, 2, and 3, and 4 of Saul, biffing it, and David doing well kind of thing. But I just kind of stuck here. I know that this is kind of a lot. But just overall, you have a big one from Judges to Kings. And then you have Samuel as the last judge, and then you have Samuel to Saul, from judge to king, and then you have the preparation of another king. So it's kind of going forest, trees, and then here, these kind of go together. These small segment divisions kind of toggle into these bigger segment divisions. So you have Samuel, and within that, you have the birth and call of Samuel, and then you have the loss and return of the ark. And then you have Samuel and Saul, and in that, you have Saul anointed king, and then the failure of Saul's kingship. And then you have Saul and David, and you have the rise of David and the decline of Saul, and the death of Saul. And then over here, I kind of started tracking. We have Eli as priest and judge, but the word of the Lord is not heard in Israel. And then Samuel as prophet, we have the word of the Lord now heard in Israel. And then Samuel is judge and prophet. And then we have with Saul anointed king, then we have Samuel primarily as prophet. And then I really didn't know how to color this one because Samuel hasn't died yet. But the prophet Gad is mentioned. And moving forward into Second Samuel, he's mentioned in Second Samuel. So I just kind of put him in right there. Sheets wasn't letting me divide the cell so I could do two different colors, but I just put Gad in there because now we're gonna have Gad. And also we know with the Bathsheba account that Nathan is the prophet that comes to David. So just kind of tracking that. I mean, we had the period of the judges where everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes. We see a corrupt priestship, and the word of the Lord not heard in Israel. And then we have Samuel. And now we have the word of the Lord. And then as we get into Second Samuel and First Chronicles, and it's even going to bring in some kings. We're going to see that whole series in precepts is kings and prophets, because then we get into the prophets to the kings. So although in Second Samuel we're primarily going to be in David's kingship, so I just started tracking that. I don't know, was anybody else tracking any other type of segment divisions?
Nope.
Yeah, I think these are kind of the main ones. So, but I do want to track this as far as the prophets, as well from Samuel on down. So any questions or comments before we close this out and call it a day?
I have a question. For the next, like, Second Samuel Chronicles, are we still gonna kind of call it the same title? Like the um after God's own heart, what do we call it? Is it kind of like same God's search for a man after his own heart?
Uh,
Continuation or
it's actually, it says the life of David, a man after God's own heart is the title of the story.
okay.
So yeah. Um, and if you, yeah, I will warn you, the workbook is thick. Um, so because it has all of Second Samuel and all of First Chronicles, and then it has some Second Kings in there. So I think that closes us out for First Samuel.